Today, we're diving into a major power struggle. What happens when some of the most powerful people in the country just say no to Congress? I mean, it's a huge question, right? It really gets to the heart of how our whole system of government is supposed to work. And believe it or not, this isn't some historical case study. It is happening right now. So let's break it all down.
So here's the headline that's causing all the buzz. Bill and Hillary Clinton have straight up defied congressional subpoenas. They're refusing to show up for an investigation, and that is setting the stage for a massive showdown. We're talking potentially serious legal trouble here.
All right, so let's get into the specifics. How did this whole thing actually go down?
And just so you know where this is all coming from, everything we're about to talk about is based on the great reporting from Shasta Unfiltered. They've been all over this story.
You know the scene in that committee room? It was something else. They had everything set up for former President Bill Clinton's deposition, and he just didn't show. All the news cameras were pointed at this one thing, an empty chair. It's such a powerful symbol, right? A literal empty seat where a former president was supposed to be.
Okay, so the big question is, why? Why are they being subpoenaed in the first place? To get that, we have to rewind a bit and look at the investigation that started this whole firestorm. It all goes back to the House Oversight Committee's investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's network. They're looking at his connections to really powerful people, and, well, Bill Clinton's ties have been pretty well documented over the years. But here's the key thing you need to know. This wasn't some surprise attack. These subpoenas were actually approved 5 months ago, and get this, with unanimous, bipartisan support from the committee. Both sides agreed on this.
So let's just run through the timeline real quick. The committee kicks off its Epstein probe. Then, months ago, they get that bipartisan approval for the subpoenas. Fast forward to the deadline, January 13th. Bill Clinton is scheduled to appear. He doesn't. And Hillary Clinton, her deposition was slated for the very next day. So you can see how this was building up to be a 1-2 punch of defiance.
You know, there's a legal term for what we're talking about here. It's called contempt of Congress. So what does that actually mean? Let's get into it.
Think of it like this. It's basically Congress's main enforcement tool. If they issue a subpoena and someone just ignores it or it gets in the way of their investigation, this is their way of saying, hey, you can't do that. It's how they make sure their work has teeth and can't just be brushed aside.
So how does it work? It's pretty much a 3-step dance. Step 1, the committee that issued the subpoena, in this case, the Oversight Committee, has to vote on a contempt resolution. If that passes, it's on to Step 2. The entire House of Representatives votes on it. And if that passes, we hit Step 3. The whole thing gets kicked over to the Department of Justice. And that's when the DOJ has to decide whether or not to actually press criminal charges.
Okay, so let's say this goes all the way. It goes through the House, the DOJ prosecutes, and they get a conviction. What are the actual penalties we're talking about here?
First up, the money. It's a big hit to the wallet. We're talking a maximum fine of $100,000.
And it's not just about the money. There's also potential prison time. The law allows for a sentence anywhere from 1 month all the way up to a full year behind bars. So yeah, when you combine the fine and the jail time, the stakes here are absolutely real.
All right, let's pull back for a second and look at the bigger picture. Because none of this is happening in a vacuum, right? There's a whole lot of politics and history that play into this. And no surprise here, we're hearing 2 totally different stories from each side. On one hand, the Clintons' camp is saying these subpoenas aren't even legally valid, that this is just a partisan witch hunt meant to score political points. But on the other side, the committee is arguing that this is about transparency, about public trust, and about getting to the bottom of the Epstein case, no matter who's involved.
And you know, this isn't the first time we've seen this kind of showdown recently. Just look at Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, 2 former Trump aides. They defied subpoenas related to the January 6th investigation, they were held in contempt, and they were both convicted and sentenced to 4 months in prison. That case sets a really interesting precedent, and you'd have to think it's on the minds of everyone at the Department of Justice as they watch this unfold.
So that's the big question, isn't it? What happens next? Where does this all go from here?
Well, there are a few key things you're going to want to watch for. First, that formal contempt vote in the committee. That's step 1. Then, the real nail-biter. If the House sends it over, will the DOJ actually prosecute? You can also bet we're going to see a ton of legal challenges from the Clintons' lawyers. And all of this will be happening while the political noise just gets louder and louder. When you strip it all away, this whole thing really comes down to one massive question. Is this a showdown that's going to test the absolute limits of what Congress can and can't do? Or could this be the moment that sets a totally new standard for accountability,
showing that no one, not even a former president, is above the law. We don't have the answer yet, but we're about to find out.